ocean dry and watch the sunrise. You can ask about it, but nobody knows the way. No breadcrumb trail to follow through your days. It takes an axe sometimes, a feather, in the sunshine and bad weather. It's a matter of getting deeper in any way you can. All this beauty.
Welcome to Jeannie on the Beat, Talking with the Talent, Ann Arbor's newest talk variety show, where I'll bring you up close and personal with fabulous writers, performers, and other fascinating folks. My guest tonight is William Konkolesky, author of Experiencer, Raised in Two Worlds, and state director of the Michigan chapter of the Mutual UFO Network. Konkolesky regularly delivers lectures on UFOs in the Detroit metro area and has also appeared on numerous UFO-related TV shows, including an ABC special with Peter Jennings and the Sci-Fi Channel's Abduction Diaries. He's been a consultant for the History Channel and is currently working on a new UFO documentary with National Geographic. Welcome, Bill. It is great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah. So I understand you're the state director of the national organization called the Mutual UFO Network.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, MUFON, as it's called, right,
Mm-hmm.
was started in 1969 and currently has over 450 trained field investigators and 850 plus trainees. Over 300 scientists volunteering, doing consulting and research, and over 3,000 members, including yourself. So tell us about MUFON's mission and what happens at a MUFON meeting.
Okay. There's a couple different aspects to MUFON. One, of course, is the investigative piece. In Michigan alone, we get roughly about 200 sightings reported to MUFON, just to the Michigan chapter every year. And our investigators go out and do their best to try to figure out what's going on. See, first of all, of course, is the person seeing an airplane? Is it something like Venus? Yes, people still report Venus. Something along those lines. And there's a very small number that are still very sensational, very interesting sightings that can't be explained away. And what we do then is to try to get the word out that people are seeing things that they can't explain. And then the other piece to MUFON is that we meet 5 times a year, and the group comes and they discuss the UFO topic, any new books that come along, any hot speakers on the circuits nowadays, that type of thing. And then we have a buffet and we have a presenter speak on the UFO topic, that sort of thing. And we share, the findings that the field investigators have done.
Okay, so the members are not just field investigators. They could be just anybody who's interested?
Anybody, yeah, interested in the UFO subject can attend the meetings, certainly. Okay. And amongst that group, there are those who really want to get their hands dirty and, look and try to solve the UFO mystery.
And how did you end up becoming a state director?
Well, back, it was 1989. I was in my senior year of high school. And I had seen something with a couple of friends and didn't know who to report it to. The 3 of us were sitting in a car, and this bright blue ball of light came over the car, sort of arced over at the height of a couple telephone poles. Then this white light shot all over the sky, and then a red light appeared in the middle of the sky.
Wow.
And the 3 of us saw it, and in fact, somebody I worked with the next day I found out also saw it. And so we're like, what do we do? Who do we tell? Do you tell the police? And we're like, we're high school seniors, they're going to ask,
Right.
And so we're like, maybe we should tell the military. We're like, that's kind of intimidating, especially for high school seniors. So sat on it for a while because didn't know who to tell. Had a friend who lived in Chicago said, why don't you tell this group, the Center for UFO Studies, which is based out of Chicago. And so when I went there and brought up my this particular sighting to them, they said, "Oh, you should tell your Michigan MUFON chapter." I'm like, "MUFON, what is that?" So I talked to the state director at the time. Her name was Shirley Coyne. This was '93 at the point where I actually brought it up to MUFON.
Oh, so it's been a couple of years then in between, okay.
Right, yeah, and so I brought it up to her, and she was very professional, and I could tell very knowledgeable, and the organization was really put together very well. And I shared a lot more of what happened to me because that was just one thing out of many that I couldn't explain that had happened in my life. Very welcoming, and so I stayed on board and eventually just worked my way up to where I am right now.
So you've been involved with this organization for quite a while, almost 20 years.
Yeah, I guess
Getting
it is coming on that.
So, and Michigan has how many members just in the Michigan
Roughly
chapter?
about 100. Yeah, we
About
float around
100 come and go.
Yeah, we get new members in, some people drop out, but it stays roughly about 100.
So the job of a field investigator is to really check the veracity of the story. And do they have a set of questions that have been honed over time?
Oh yes, our field investigator manual is very, very in-depth.
Really?
Most of the time, depending on what the person sees, you may not get to some of the ancillary reports that include, has the ground been damaged? If something has come that close, did you see any entities? Things to do with if they actually got a photo or video off of it. There's a lot of side reports that aren't always used. But if you have something that's got a multifaceted experience going on, yeah, you're going to see a lot of documentation that we put into it.
I would guess that now there are more and more people taking pictures because everybody's got a camera now on their cell phone. Pretty much, right? And even video can do videos. So are you seeing more of that kind of documentation, or does it?
Yeah, it's a two-edged sword though, because we get a lot more pictures, but the cell phone quality isn't quite there.
That's true.
You see a small picture of a dot, or if they even take it as a video, their hands aren't always quite steady, and so that takes away from being able to really make sure that it's authentic or not. And people also will have things appear on their cell phones that they think are UFOs that aren't necessarily. Like if you've ever taken your cell phone, and I know of course everybody does this, and takes a picture of the sun, you'll find that a lot of times it'll create a black pixel or two in the picture. And so it's not unusual for us to get reports of people saying, I didn't see the UFO in the picture, but here it is clearly in front of the sun. And
So that's happened enough that you can easily identify those and explain those to people.
correct. And
Yeah.
sometimes they take it well.
What would you say is the percentage out of the roughly 200 that are reported each year that turn out to be something you would say is authentic?
I would put about roughly a third into the anomalous category. Some people reduce that down into like 5%, just because out of that 1/3, there aren't enough pieces of data to, really go one way or another. But some of the stories are just, frankly incredible. One of the recent ones that I've been discussing quite a bit lately is somebody heard this creaking going around at different parts of their house. They weren't really sure what it was, and so they were investigating where's the sound coming from, and decided to look outside, which clearly wasn't, going to be the obvious source for where the sound was coming from. And they saw a giant triangular craft and also an orb just flying around like crazy in their backyard.
Wow.
And so, what do you do with that? You
Yeah.
document it, and we collect it with all the other reports that are very similar to it, make it available. You can go to our website to see these reports that people put in, and so you can even actually go, if you go to MoveOn.com and put in certain search parameters, pull up basically the type of information you're looking for. Say you're interested in saying, I want to know what the first 100 UFO sightings were reported this year. You can look that up. I'm interested solely in abductions. Let me look that up. You can do that.
You can sort it based on what you're looking for.
You're not going to get the level of details that you would if you were internal to the organization. For example, if you report a MUFON, UFO sighting to MUFON, we're not going to put your name on the website, your address, your phone number, your email, anything that is used for us to contact you. But you know, we will put a snippet of the sighting so that other people can see what's been going on lately.
How often does one person have more than one sighting? Is that pretty rare?
Not at all rare, actually.
Really?
And
Is it because they start looking for them once they've seen it once, that they, you know, I mean,
yeah, one thought that I have on that is that if you've never seen a UFO, but you think they're out there or don't think they're out there, you're a believer or a non-believer. If you see something that you know can't be explained at all through, you know, standard explanations, then you know you're not a believer, you're not a non-believer, you know that something is out there. And once you know, I think, yeah, you do become, your radar does start to pick up a few more things that you might have overlooked before.
you kind of get attuned to noticing things. Bill, you've been involved with some pretty impressive media outfits, including ABC and the Sci-Fi Channel and the History Channel, and now National Geographic. Considering these thousands of people, if you look at nationwide, thousands of people who report seeing UFOs, how did you come to be considered a subject matter expert?
Well, I don't know if that anybody is really an expert in the field. If you could actually catch a UFO or an entity, you know, then you can, you know, maybe have, you know, earn some sort of bragging rights. It's just, I think, a matter of staying, yeah, tuned in long enough and, you know, being serious about trying to find the answer. Your name gets out a little bit and, you know, you become an easy target for somebody who might be looking for, you know, advice or opinions on the phenomena. Like, for example, you said that it's been close to 20 years, something I don't generally think of, but then if I was looking to ask somebody about UFOs, I'd probably say, oh, this guy's been at it for this long, you know, might know something.
And also that you're involved in the leadership role with MUFON.
And I enjoy the projects that I've been in, and I felt good about everything that I've been involved with so far. So although there is a little bit of a giggle factor out there often enough, for some reason I've just been lucky enough to be involved in stuff that I think that I respect. So
Has some credibility. And you have written a book called Experiencer, Raised in Two Worlds. Can you tell us about your personal experiences and why you wrote the book?
Sure. I've had unusual experiences ever since the age of 2. My earliest memory, in fact, is of an experience. And I'll just jump right to saying that I've told the story so many times that I wanted to put it down all in one place so that if somebody says, hey, really quick, can you tell me about all the experiences you've had? Well, it takes me about 6 hours to get through everything now. I mean, I've seen a lot of high strangeness. And so the book was a way to say, here.
Here, read my book.
Yep. And a way, you know, it's a personal journal of mine as well. So in that respect, you know, a lot of these things happened so many years ago now, I wanted to get them all down on paper. And as the way that I've written it is for my own personal sake as sort of a journal. You know, I felt no need to exaggerate anything that's happened in the book, and a lot of it is very strange, or downplay it, but just pretty much tell it as it is. And therefore, it's a quick read. I don't put in a lot of filler that doesn't necessarily need to be there. It just gets right to the heart of the matter of the high strangeness. And going back to, as I said, my very first experience of age 2, I was, and this again is my very first memory in life, is I was laying in my crib. I had just turned 2, and it was the middle of the night, and I was laying there, and this face appeared at the foot of my crib. It was skull-like, which is the closest thing that I could associate that I was familiar with at that point in life. And it just sort of looked down at me, and it took some mild interest, and then left the room. So the face came in from out of the hallway, looked down at me, and left. And as best I could tell, was headed to the room where my brothers were. a very simple thing in that, you know, I don't remember being pulled out or anything done to me at that point, but, you know, it was highly traumatic. I called for my parents, screamed for
So
my
it
parents.
scared you.
Yeah, and they were in the next room, and all I heard was my mom's voice saying back to me, "Oh, go back to sleep, go back to sleep." I'm like, "I'm not sleeping, I'm not dreaming. You know, I have full function of everything, and I'm seeing this scary thing at the foot of my crib." Several years later, I went under hypnosis, hypnotic regression through MUFON to see if I could pull up any more details. And
So how old were you at that point then?
that I had the regression, I would pin it at probably 22. It was in 93 that I had it done. So,
Okay.
and when they looked at the experience, nothing really about the experience changed. There was still an entity that had come in and looked down at me and left the room. All that hypnosis seemed to change was it added some details to the room that I had forgotten about. Authentic details that I was able to verify after the fact. So when I got out of hypnosis and realized that hypnosis helped me recall a lot of things about my room that I'd forgotten that were actually the case, I said, well, you know, that convinced me that it was a good and powerful tool to help recall. And yeah, the face fleshed out a little bit under hypnosis, and I could see its dark peering eyes, and it did have a light amount of flesh on it. It's still very skeletal looking.
And then you had a different experience later.
Yeah, as my childhood progressed, I had another experience at 4 that I recall, another experience at age 7, and these are things that weren't the type of thing where many years later say, you know, I think I remember something happened to me as a little kid. No, these are things that always
You
stuck
remembered.
with me, yeah. And the one at age 7 was particularly traumatic, and many things actually besides even traumatic. It was quite a roller coaster. There are a lot of different aspects to what happened on this particular case, but I'll get right to the heart of the experience, I suppose. I was laying in bed, and I saw a cable come out of the ceiling, like sort of a dark circle, and it was very sort of much like a hose, like somebody dropped a hose through, and it had a life of its own. It started jumping around as if it was the end of some sort of electrical circuit, and I felt a vibration come over me, and then suddenly I was in what appeared to be a craft, some sort of vehicle. I assumed that. I don't remember being taken out, marched across a lawn and up steps or anything like that, but it seemed to have a lot of aspects to it that made it appear like a vehicle. And inside there were several gray beings, much like the one that peered over my crib at age 2 and that had revisited me at age 4, which I give a lot more detail in the book, of course. And they brought me in and sat me down in a chair. And at that point, being with, most people assume that these things just have black, dark eyes, but there are other eye colors that I've seen. In this particular case, I encountered one that had bright blue eyes. So this situation, I'm sitting here in this chair, and the alien came up to me, I'll call it an alien for lack of a better word for it, and said that, be very good and we'll let you see the color blue. And I'm like, okay, see the
You were
color
7,
blue? Yeah.
so,
I'm like, I've seen blue before, you know, you're gonna have to
Yeah.
do a little bit better to impress me, you know, but so I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I feel a sharp pain on my arm, and I look down and I see that it's healing, that it's scarring up. And I look back up at the thing, I'm like, what the heck, you know, you just cut my arm. And as I look back to the creature's face, whereas it had black eyes, just a moment before, its eyes just shot like a bright blue. They like flipped a switch, and suddenly these bright blue eyes were staring into me. And yeah, it was tranquil, it was beautiful, it was mesmerizing, and I had gone from pretty much a state of terror into a state of complete relaxation.
sort of hypnotic in a way.
Yep, and I lost myself in its eyes, and it was suddenly a very dreamy type of feeling, very much real, but still had that dreaminess to it. And then, yeah, awoke the next day, and during the day, they came back while another friend was over playing and checked on me in the backyard to make sure I was okay. So,
Did your friends see anything?
my friend saw the mist that came through the backyard. The being had actually come, there was a cloud that came around the corner through the backyard and out the other side. I don't believe he saw the entity that was actually inside the cloud. And of course, I know how this sounds, and so it may sound even unusual that I say it almost deadpan, but you know, it happened, and I've told the story enough time that you know I just get right to the details here, I guess. But yeah, it's highly bizarre, it's highly strange, and you tell the best meaning people who think that they study and investigate the stuff, and they say, yeah, that's strange, you know, and you know, but you know, there's not a lot that can often be done about these types of things except to document them.
Well, and certainly you're not the only one
Oh no,
who's
by no
reported
means.
these. Do you have any sense of how many people, like for say in Michigan, report this? Is it on an annual basis, or how often?
Yeah, I would
Do
say.
we hear reports?
If I had to make a guess, it's 5 to 10 as an average annually. It's hard for me to put a number on that because a lot of people, when they have entity sightings, they don't go through the traditional means of going to MUFON.com and submitting their sighting. Often they'll call or they'll email, and they won't want to do a report. They want that extra layer of
Anonymity.
protection, anonymity. But yeah, people still report very highly unusual things. A gentleman just a month ago told me he was sitting at home watching television and suddenly saw a dark figure blur run across the room so quickly it was a blur, and then woke up 8 hours later during the middle of the time where he would normally be awake. It wasn't just like,
And that's
oh,
a
I'm
common.
about to, yeah.
That's a very common thing, is time loss, right? Lapses
Yeah,
in time,
many people report that.
inexplainable lapses in time.
So yeah, people still report things like that. He doesn't know how to look very much into what happened without having to possibly seek the tool of hypnosis, and he's concerned that it's a reliable tool, and sometimes it is, and I feel that my experience with it shows that it is, at least some of the time, but certainly in other cases you find the wrong person, and you know, it might not turn out as well. So he's cautious about that, and of course cautious about finding out what really happened.
Well, yeah, it could
during
be
those 8 hours.
frightening. I want to shift gears a little bit. Can you tell us, for our viewers who don't know anything about this, can you just tell us very briefly about Roswell? And then I'd like to hear about your role in the upcoming National Geographic documentary about Roswell.
I think a lot of
Roswell, New Mexico, I should say.
Yep. A lot of people that are into the UFO phenomena really root for Roswell. Roswell being, of course, 1947, an alleged crash of a UFO in the desert there in New Mexico. Allegedly, the government came, found the bodies and the craft, and squirreled it away, and been trying to keep it under wraps ever since.
Okay.
You'll find different groups that are into the UFO phenomena. You find the people that are excited about the UFOs themselves. They'll count the number of triangle sightings versus discs. They're interested in the colors of the disc. Like, oh, it shot out a yellow light. Oh, very important, you know, and they'll follow that types of nuts and bolts thing. They're very interested in the craft. Then you have people, of course, very interested in the alien side, the entity
beings,
side.
yeah.
And Roswell has not only a UFO,
Both.
and entities, but it's also got the conspiracy theory, the government cover-up. So, you know, from all different angles, people that are excited about, you know, any aspect of UFOs can find something in Roswell to really get excited about.
And what about the documentary that you're working on? Are they, again, just sort of recapping the same facts that have been Is there anything new happening with that, or why is
Um,
National Geographic involved at this point?
Yeah, they have an ongoing series, sort of like a modern take on In Search Of. It's called The Truth Behind. And this is the truth behind UFOs, and they're looking at several different aspects.
What do you think it's going to take to move this phenomenon from science fiction, which is where it is for a lot of people in their minds, to science fact?
It's really tough. Seth Shostak from the SETI group that looks for radio signals.
Can you tell us what SETI is? What is it?
It's a search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's radar that's trying to pick up radio signals basically from space, like if alien civilizations are trying to contact other alien civilizations, maybe they're doing it by radio signal and maybe we can pick it up.
Okay.
And so he's involved with that group, and he had made a fairly interesting point, which was you could never really fully disprove that UFOs are visiting this planet if you wanted to, because there are so many new sightings all the time. Some of them are so highly dramatic that you can't just simply dismiss them. So the phenomena is never really going to go away. However, on the flip side, there hasn't been a case, for those people wanting to say the UFO phenomena is real, that somebody wasn't just able to stand up and say, oh, they were mistaken, or, show me the evidence or something like that. Even though, as a UFO investigator, I say there's plenty of them. You're just not, you're just flat out ignoring them.
So it sounds like it's just going to be a matter of time and numbers and finding, hopefully at some point, some incontrovertible evidence, hard evidence, besides just testimony and images.
And if anybody in the viewing audience is interested, if I had to point out a single one that I think is a great one, it's a sighting in Iran during the late 1970s.
Is there a name for it, or how would they find it?
I would, if you just Google Iran UFO,
Really?
that would probably be enough to locate it, I think. It would probably be within the top few hits.
Really? Okay, thank you. I know there's also quite a remarkable one in Texas that was just a few years ago.
Oh, the Stephenville, yeah.
Stephenville, right? Yeah, I actually heard about that one on NPR, and I was like, yeah. So if someone believes that they have either had a direct encounter with an extraterrestrial being or has seen a UFO, what do you recommend that he or she do?
I would contact MUFON.
Contact MUFON.
I mean, we've been around since 1969 for a reason. Even though I've been with the group far less than that time, when I got on board, a lot of caring, a lot of serious people. There's somebody involved in the group that is knowledgeable in just about any aspect of the phenomena.
Great.
And we're more of a family than a group of like single investigators that only want to take information we hear from people and put it in our private file case and never tell anybody.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Bill, for being here tonight. And thank you, Ann Arbor, for joining us. And remember to tune in the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at 10:30 p.m. or look for rebroadcasts of Jeannie on the Beat at various times throughout the week. Ciao, Ann Arbor.
All this beauty, you might have to close your eyes and slowly open wide. All this beauty, we traveled